Welcome to Cork. This is Ireland's second city and, depending on who you ask, is widely regarded to be Ireland's real capital. In any case, it's the culinary capital of the Emerald Isle, and here you'll find amazing bars and restaurants. We're here for the next few days to discover exactly what makes Cork so special, including some hidden gems and where to eat. Cork is also a great base from which to take many day trips, some of which we'll show you over the course of this video. Cork doesn't really have a huge city centre, and so you can easily explore it on foot over the course of a few hours. The city sits on the River Lee and boasts 29 bridges, which means that it has more than Dublin. St Finbarr's Cathedral is probably the most iconic landmark of Cork. It was consecrated in 1870 and is built in the Gothic Revival style, though there's been a place of worship here since the 7th century. It's dedicated to St Finbarr of Cork, who's the patron saint of the city, and today you can go inside to have a look. Once you get inside the cathedral, you're greeted by over 400 carvings and some pretty stunning stained glass windows. Rather notably, not only were most of the windows designed by acclaimed Victorian architect William Burgess, but he also designed the cathedral itself. It's €8 to enter the cathedral, which is a little steep, but there are several treasures to uncover inside. One of my personal favourites is a £24 shot, which is displayed near the altar, and this was actually fired in 1690 during the Siege of Cork from the nearby Elizabeth Fort. It was actually discovered in 1864 when the old cathedral was demolished to make way for the new one that you see behind me. We've just arrived at Elizabeth Fort. This is the best preserved urban artillery fortification in Ireland and dates all the way back to 1626. It's actually free to visit unless you get the audio guide, which you do have to pay for, and a visit takes around 10 to 15 minutes. We're promised great views of Cork from the top. The original fort was built in 1601 and was originally made of just earth and timber. It was then demolished by the citizens of Cork because they wanted to protest the accession of James I as King of England. They were then forced to rebuild this fort at their own cost in 1626, where it stood proudly over the city ever since. Unfortunately, the view isn't great at the moment because there's a lot of construction going on in the area, but I'm sure it'll be lovely when it's finished. We've just arrived on what is probably the most picturesque street in Cork. This is Greenfield Lane, and it's a little pedestrian alleyway filled with beautiful plants. We even met a local dock. One of the most famous places to get food in Cork is the English market, but it's unfortunately closed on a Sunday, and so we instead headed to a delightful cafe by the name of Paper Boys. They serve up lots of brunch style plates and specialty coffee is on the menu. If you're a book lover, then you have to visit Vibes and Scribes, which is right by the river. The history of the bookshop actually dates all the way back to the 1990s, and this particular branch has a huge selection of secondhand books. We're now headed into the Shandon. This is Cork's historic city centre, and there are a few attractions of note here. While Ireland might be most famous for its rugby, the local sport that's really popular here is called hurling. And this is played with a baton, which is known as a hurley. And you basically walk around a few steps with the ball before you have to pass it to another player. The pitches are huge. And yesterday we even saw a match in a pub where Cork won. There's one place that a number of local residents told us to visit, and that's St Anne's Church, because you can actually ring the bells here. Now, the church itself is also interesting because the tower has 4 clock faces, and each tower a slightly different time, leading to the nickname, the Four-Faced Liar. There are a few tunes you can play. Apparently Bell 8 is currently out of order, so I'll try and find a song that doesn't require 8. It was my birthday a couple of days ago, so we're going to try and play Happy Birthday. I think one of them might be out of tune, but I can't tell with the ear defenders on. So as you can see, Antoine was probably way better at ringing the bells than me. I can't even imagine what it must be like to be a local resident here, because imagine hearing people ring the bells like me all day. Not very good. Anyway, we're going to go all the way to the top of the tower now, where hopefully we'll get a great view of Cork. I think you're too big to fit through here. We then headed to the Franciscan Well Brewery, where we got pizza and a beer before we learned more about the history of the brewery itself.
A little bit about the history of the site is that it's originally a 13th century Franciscan monastery site, so it ages back to the year 1219, and we still have some of the remains of the old stone walls around the beer garden as well. If you're familiar with the Shandon Bell Tower, the viewing tower on the north side of the city.
We just went
really?
there.
That was actually rebuilt from the ruins from our monastery walls as well.
Wow.
Yeah, so a lot of the walls would have been knocked down during the penal times, but the monastery would have been gifted to the monks by the local chieftain at the time as well. So he basically would have gifted them the monastery because he thought it would free himself of purgatory. So to honour him, the chieftain on his 6th nights was actually buried beneath the brewery, and then a lot of the monks are still buried beneath the beer garden floors as well. So the whole site is all protected underneath the Historic Act. We're not allowed to flatten out the grounds or anything like that. And then around the corner from the pizza kitchen, we have the old well back there. The monks would use the water from that well to make their own beer and make their own bread. And a lot of people used to believe that the water had curative properties as well, that it would cure illnesses. So many people used to come and pray at the well and drink the water as well. But it's just gradually dried up over the last 5 to 10 years because of all the building and construction up on the north side of the city. There also was a cave behind where the pizza kitchen is now, and the monks would use that cave to store their beer in there as well. So apparently the temperature in that cave would have been at the perfect temperature for them to condition cask ales. And there also would have been a secret tunnel as part of that cave that led to a church just up on the north side of the city. People used to use that to kind of travel to mass secretly as well. moving on to 1998, that's when the site was purchased for the construction of the microbrewery then. So it's been the same brewery ever since. There's been no changes made to it. The first 6 years inside here would have been quite slow. There wasn't really much of a big interest in craft beer in Ireland at the time. So any of the beer that they did brew out of here, they just served straight out of the vats behind the bar for the first few years. After a while, Molson Coors bought the Francisco Mill brand name and the microbrewery from us, and they opened the bigger brewery down by the marina, if you've seen that down there. So that's where they're brewing all the Francisco Mill beers. We were still brewing a couple of the Franwell beers in the microbrewery until the end of 2021. But then the owner of the pub actually bought the microbrewery, back off Molson Coors again, became independent again and started the new company, Original 7 Beverage Company. So that's where you'll see that kind of around the bar and around the beer garden. So the reason why they called it Original 7 was because we were part of the first Original 7 microbreweries in Ireland. So we were the 7th. Out of those Original 7, it's only us, O'Hara's and the Porterhouse that are still here.
So how can people visit the brewery? Because I see that you now offer brewery tours.
Yeah, so we just started doing brewery tours now 6 days a week, Tuesday to Sunday, and the best way to book is through our website. But if you're looking to book a private tour at a different time or just with a larger group, you can just send an email to the franciscomillbrewery@gmail.com.
Thank you so much for having us and for talking to us about the brewery.
Yeah, thanks very much for coming in, and enjoy the rest of your stay in Cork.
Some of the most beautiful places in Ireland can actually be found outside of the large cities. And Cork is not just the name of Ireland's second city, but it's also the name of the biggest county. So today we're going to be exploring some of the most beautiful towns close to Cork that you can visit as a day trip. We're starting out the day in Cobh, which you've probably already seen photos of because it's one of the most postcard-worthy spots in Ireland. It's also very famous historically. Firstly, it was the last point of call for the Titanic before it set off across the Atlantic. At that time, Cobh was known as Queenstown. This was also a major point of emigration from Ireland between 1848 and 1950. It's estimated that at that time, around 2.5 million Irish citizens left Ireland to set out for a new life elsewhere in the world. Today, this is a very pleasant port town. There are several museums to discover and lots of beautiful views. So let's go and see what Cobh has to offer. If you want to learn more about the history of Cobh, then you can come to the Cobh Museum. This is housed within a former Presbyterian church that was closed down in 1965. The church was then gifted to Cork County Library in 1973, and today it serves as a museum of the town. It's really close to the harbour and you have beautiful views over the surrounding estuary. If the weather isn't on your side during your visit to Cobh, then it's worth visiting the Cobh Heritage Centre, which tells the story of both the maritime and emigration history of the town. The story of Ireland is also one of immigration, and Annie Moore, who is depicted here in the statue, along with her brothers, left Cobh on the 20th of December 1891. She arrived in New York at the new Ellis Island immigration facility, and she was actually the first person to pass through the doors of the famous island. In time, over 12 million people would pass through Ellis Island on their journey into America. Today, Annie Moore and her brothers are commemorated here in Cobh at the seafront, not far from where they departed from. Cobh is also the departure point for tourist boats who wish to reach Spike Island. This is often referred to as Ireland's answer to Alcatraz and is a former prison in the waters close to Cork's harbour. If you want to learn more about the Titanic's final departure point here in Cobh, then you can actually visit the Titanic Cobh experience. The deck of cards is a set of 23 painted townhouses close to the cathedral. They're often referred to as similar to the painted ladies of San Francisco, and they're very lovely to look at. They're called the deck of cards because it's said that if one collapses, all will collapse. In any case, they haven't so far, and you should definitely come here to look at them because they're stunning. Cobh's most impressive building is St. Colman's Cathedral, which was completed in 1919. Its steeple is over 90 metres tall, making it the tallest church in Ireland. It's completely free to go inside, but donations are always appreciated. We've just driven a little way down the coastline to reach Kinsale. This is the official gateway to the Wild Atlantic Way, which we're making another video on, but this is also a great day trip from Cork. It's best known for all of its beautiful, colourful houses and historic buildings. Kinsale is pretty tiny and there's only 3 main streets here. In fact, in times gone by, it would have been even smaller, as this plaque denotes. This side was actually the centre of the walled town, what would have been the walled town, and the square to my left would actually have not even existed. It would have been part of the sea, as this is all reclaimed land. And so where I'm stood now would once have been a dock. To be honest, the best thing about exploring Kinsale is just wandering around the little streets. It's pretty small, and so you'll only need an hour or so to discover all of this town's beautiful treasures. Desmond Castle was built in around 1500 for use as a customs house, though it's seen plenty of uses over the years, including to house American prisoners during the American War of Independence and also to house French prisoners. It's also known locally as the French prison because unfortunately 54 seamen who were being held captive in the building died during a fire of 1747. More recently, it's been used to house an international museum of wine. Unfortunately, I think this is temporarily closed or something at the moment because there's no entranceway to the museum at this time. And when I looked online, it said temporarily closed. Hopefully it will reopen one day. We picked up an ice cream at Jesk, and to be honest, it's very tasty. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more Europe travel content. See you next week.